I see you, Dana, in the chat. TikTok Shives. Oh, I forgot the pin chat. Thank you, Kane. Let me do that right now. Hey, everybody. Remember that I'm answering questions from patrons and members first. So please hold your questions for me in the live chat until I'm through with those. And see, that's exactly what I typed. And I'll pin it, and there we go. Thank you for reminding me about that. So, yeah, how is everybody? This turned out to be today's Veterans Day here in the U.S. and Remembrance Day in Canada and the U.K. and all over the old British Empire, and Armistice Day in France. So, depending on how observant you are of any or all of those holidays, this is a somewhat somber day anyway. But unfortunately, a lot of us who are comic book fans or cartoon fans or Batman fans or nerds of any kind have something to be somber about as well, because unfortunately, and I hope I'm not breaking this news for anybody, if anybody hasn't heard this yet, I apologize that you are hearing it from me. But this morning it was reported that Kevin Conroy has died. So that's a bummer. And I know a couple people have mentioned it in the chat already and are kind of bummed out about it. And I do not blame you at all. So after I get through the patron and member questions, if you want to talk about Batman or talk about Kevin Conroy for a while, I would be completely up for that. Or anything else you want to talk about. But I just wanted to acknowledge that up front. It's a sad day for us Batman fans. And it's okay to be sad about it because it sucks. So anyway, on that note, let me move on to the patron and member questions. And just a reminder, as I just typed in the live chat for my pin message, I will be answering patron and member questions first. And once I get through those, I will be happy to pay full attention to the live chat for the rest of the show. But if you have something for me in the live chat, if you want to talk about something or ask me a question or get my opinion or whatever, and especially if you're going to be generous and throw in a super chat, if possible, please hold on to it until I get through the patron and the member questions. And then I will be spending all of my time and all of my attention on the live chat. So having said that, I will now turn my attention to the patron and member questions and see what all of my patrons and members have had to say. And the first one is from Matt, who says, so this is a fun open-ended question. Assuming we know the makeup/results of Congress by Friday, if they get through the mail-in absentee ballots by then, based on the result, what do you think led to such outcomes? Are you feeling optimistic or worrying for the future? I'm hopeful for Dem leads in the Senate, but I know that's unlikely given the usual ebb and flow of Congress. As long as Oz loses, I'll be happy. Well, hopefully you're happy because that motherfucker lost. If nothing else, we don't need to have him in the Senate. I mean, it looks like the Democrats will hold on to the Senate by that much. And, we still have a runoff to get through in Georgia again with Senator Warnock and Herschel Walker. So hopefully that goes our way. That won't be until next month. But and it looks like unless the odds are extremely in our favor, the Democrats are probably going to lose the majority in the House, and the Democrats are going to lose the majority in the House, and the Republicans are going to hold on to a very, very slim majority of just maybe a couple of votes in the House. So it'll be a divided Congress with either party controlling one of the houses, by the slimmest of margins. And I mean, but weirdly enough, this is good news, historically speaking, because traditionally the party that is in power in the White House loses substantially in the midterms. And that's what was predicted here. It was predicted that it would basically be a bloodbath and that the Republicans would most likely take full control of Congress, and there would be serious Democratic losses, especially in the House. And that didn't happen. So it's actually good news for us, even though it is also bad news if it turns out that the Republicans do actually attain a majority in the House. And what led to the outcome? I mean, I think what led to things not being as bad as they were forecast to be is the turnout of the under 30 vote for the Democrats. I think that's a big factor, and I think people have noted that that the youth vote turnout was the second highest turnout for that demographic for a midterm election in 30 years. And the highest was the last midterms in 2018. So this time, the voter turnout among younger voters was a few percentage points lower than in 2018, but it was still high historically speaking. And that made a big difference, you know, as people have been saying on Twitter ever since election night. Gen Z kind of saved our asses. So thank you, young voters. Young voters skew very strongly in favor of Democrats. And when young voters turn out and vote, Democrats have a much better chance at winning. And that is what happened this time. And I have a video. I haven't shot it yet, but I wrote it today, that is going up on Monday, that is about this very thing, about how I think it's time for the Democratic Party to get more serious about appealing to young voters and to stop treating them as basically a bonus. You know, is to stop treating them as like, well, we can write them off because they don't really vote anyhow, and if they do vote, they'll probably vote more for us. So it's just a bonus. I think they should be treated as a serious demographic to be appealed to, because obviously when you are able to turn them out, when you are able to get them to the polls, they vote overwhelmingly for us and they really help us win. So come on, let's do more to attract the youth vote. And if we are able to do that, and if voter turnout among voters under 30 remains relatively high, then I'm actually fairly optimistic about the future. I'm fairly optimistic about the Democrats' ability to win future elections if we can continue to energize the youth vote, because I do think that has been important the last few cycles, and it will continue to be very important. So I hope we continue to do that. And if we do, then I am very optimistic about it. But yeah, Oz lost, Fetterman won. That's good news. And I just got some really good news today. Neil Parrott, the Republican scumbag who once proposed forcibly tattooing HIV positive people to identify themselves as such, who was running for Congress in my district, after election night, it looked like he was going to win. He was ahead in the vote count by a few percentage points. And I had just sort of resigned myself to the fact that I was going to be represented in Congress by this fucking ghoulish piece of shit. But he lost after they counted all of the votes. Or they still haven't counted all of the votes, but they've counted something like, at the last I checked, they had counted something like 92% of the votes. And David Trone, the incumbent, who is a Democrat, who I proudly voted for, has pulled ahead, and the district has now been called for him. He is in all likelihood going to win and going to continue to represent my district. So that is fantastic news. It was a lovely surprise that I got today. I was very, very happy about that. So yeah, that's good too. Carlisle the Cinephile. Today I'm actually reaching out to Stuffy. I've been going through a very difficult time right now between a very emotionally draining job, working through past traumas, and having two family members who are going through medical issues. It's all been really overwhelming. Could I possibly get some words of encouragement from everyone's favorite stuffed dog? I'd really appreciate it. P.S. I very much look forward to your triumphant return in Steve's videos. Well, I told Stuffy about your question, Carlisle, and it just so happens he is joining me now via webcam from the dining room. Hello, Stuffy. How are you, my friend?
Hi, everybody. I'm very good. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Well, no problem, Stuffy. So, why don't you go ahead and say what you want to say to our friend Carlisle, and maybe you can brighten his day a little bit.
Well, I'll give it my best shot. First of all, thank you very much for the nice things you said, Carlisle. We will be coming back to Steve's channel in a few weeks. We're going to do another Thanksgiving video, a Turkey Day video, where we watch old educational movies and we make jokes and make fun of them, like on Mystery Science Theater. And it's a lot of fun. People seem to like it. So it'll be me and Steve and our friend Jack, and we'll be doing that on Thanksgiving. So I hope you can watch that and hope that brings you some enjoyment. I'm very sorry to hear about your problems and that things have been going rough for you. And if I could give you a hug and you wanted one, I would very much like to do that. But maybe I can just give you a hug verbally and say that I'm thinking about you and I'm hoping for the best for you. And I just want to say that when you're going through hard times, it's okay to acknowledge how hard they are. You don't have to pretend that hard times aren't hard. You don't have to pretend that you're not having difficulty or that you're not unhappy or struggling. It's okay to struggle. I mean, it's not okay to struggle. Struggling is bad and suffering is bad, but it's okay to admit that you're having a hard time and you don't have to deny it. And you also have to just tell yourself that you're strong enough to get through it. And I think you are. I think you have to tell yourself that there are hard times now and there have been hard times before and there will probably be hard times in the future. But that's not anything more than you can handle. And even if it's bad and it makes us sad and it makes us angry, and sometimes it's difficult to get through it, that doesn't mean that we can't get through it. Because we can, because we have before, and we will this time too. And if you need to ask Steve a question next time or the time after that or any other time, and you need me to come back and give you some more encouragement, I would be happy to do so. I just want to say that I'm thinking about you, Carlisle, and I wish you all the best, and I believe in you. And I know that things are going to get better, and I know that you're going to be okay. So I hope this helps. And I hope you like the Turkey Day video and the other videos we're going to be making at some point. Steve doesn't really have a schedule for when the next videos are going to come out other than Thanksgiving, but there are more videos with me coming out at some point in the somewhat near future, so I am told. So I hope that you enjoy those too, and I hope you have a good night. Okay, that's all I got.
Okay, well, thanks, thanks, Stuffy. I hope that was helpful, and Carlisle from me as well. I hope Stuffy was able to brighten your day, and I hope that helps. So I'm thinking about you and having a good thought for you too. Um, Here's one from WraithHearted. Greetings, Steve, and the entire Shives crew. Hope we're all doing as well as possible, and hopefully all you colonial devils have exercised your democratic right and voted the right way being to vote Democrat, ob. Anywho, my question goeth thusly. Which of the various first officers across all 10 series would you rate the highest in a bare knuckle battle royal? Who's walking out of there alive? My money's on T'Pol. Well, T'Pol is a good bet. So is Spock. But I would also say, let's not count out number one. Now that we know from Strange New Worlds that number one has super strength, let's not count her out either. I mean, it might be a three because you have T'Pol with the Vulcan strength, you have Spock with the Vulcan strength, and you have number one with not Vulcan strength, but with still superior like superhuman strength. So I don't know where the ranks are, who's the strongest, of the group, but I think you would need all three of those to be very high on the list. But honestly, I think I would still go with Riker because like while the three strong, like the two Vulcans and number one are fighting each other, like they could sort of end up fighting just in a three-way fight with each other, and then Riker could sneak up and maybe Riker could like push Chakotay into one of them, you know, or maybe like Saru could, pull out his little needles from his neck and shoot at somebody. But while in all that chaos, Riker could kind of hang back, wait for the ranks to be thinned a little bit, and then just sneak up behind whoever's the last person standing and just wrap them in a rear naked choke and just choke them out. Maybe either that would happen, or whoever Riker tries that on would just flip him over and punch him in the nose and drive his septum up into his brain, and then they would win. And who would be brutal enough to do that move and kill Riker in such a horrific and terrible fashion? Yeah, you're right. Probably T'Pol. So yeah, I think I agree with you. Michael Hadeline struggles to keep his questions under 1,000 characters. RE fan service leads to entitlement. Do you think artists should not consider their audience? Long ago, when I was in art school, I remember this actually becoming contentious when a professor told us that the artist had an obligation to their audience. Some students were quite upset by this, thinking that they should just make what they want and whoever liked it, liked it. The professor dismissed such an approach as little better than masturbation. But I also see your point about the sandwich artist, who only tries to pander to an audience as much as possible. I know from art history that this is actually a very old discussion in the art world and was a catalyst of the modern art movement 150 years ago. Personally, I think there's a middle ground. To me, that middle ground is considering what your work might say to the audience without compromising too much just to give them what you think they want. Do you think that there is a middle ground? If so, what do you think it is? I think it differs depending on the artist. Look, if you are the artist and you are primarily concerned with your audience and you are trying to make your audience happy and you are tailoring your art and making creative choices with the view of trying to make your audience happy, good luck. And I hope you understand your audience well enough to do that without compromising the quality of your art. If that is also something you care about. I mean, if all you want to do is just pander to people and make them happy, then you know what? I mean, that's your right as the artist. If that is what you are choosing to do, if that's what you really want to do, then go ahead. I may end up judging your art harshly, but there's no reason you need to give a shit about what I think. I mean, if you're the artist and that's the art you want to make, then make that art. I think it is I think it's good for an artist, especially if your art is a form of storytelling. I think it is a good idea for a storyteller to at least have some idea of what kind of emotional response or what kind of reaction they would hope the audience would have to whatever they're doing, and to tell their story in such a way to evoke that response. That's different from giving the audience what they want. That's knowing how to get the audience to react in a way that you want or that you need for your work to be taken as you would like it to be, for it to be properly received according to your intentions or your hopes for it or whatever. I think that's important. And I do think that is a different thing than pandering to an audience and just giving them things that you think will make them go, like, again, unless that is just the reaction you want. But so it's not so much that you should never consider the audience. It's more that you should not allow the audience, either in reality or the audience that you are imagining in your head as you're making up the story. You should not allow the audience a vote in terms of what happens in the story, what your major creative decisions will be, what the tone of the story will be, things like that. You're the artist, you're the storyteller. It should be your story. And I've said this before, your only directive should be to serve the story. If it's your story, if you're the writer or you're the director or whatever role you are taking in the telling of the story, you should have an idea of how this story needs to be told, of what the best way to tell this story is, so that the story is as good as it can be, however you determine that. And then you should pursue that. That should be your number one purpose. not what the audience thinks, not pleasing the crowd, telling the story the best way the story can be told, serving the needs of the story. That's your job, as far as I'm concerned. And the thing is, if you do that, and if you do that job well, then probably not everybody will like your story, but it will attract an audience that does like it and that does appreciate it. And to me, that's how it's supposed to work. Again, just my opinion. I'm not the end all be all of this, but the way I look at it, that's how it should work. The artist tells their story or creates their art, whatever form it takes, and follows their muse and does it the way they think it needs to be done to make it as good as they can make it and as close to what they want it to be as possible. And then they release it to the world and people experience it. And some people don't like it. Some people don't get it. It's not some people's cup of tea, whatever, but some people do connect with it. And that's your audience. So that's how I look at it. But no, it's not. So, but no, to long story short, it's not so much that the artist should never, ever, ever consider the audience, but they should not be trying to, appeal to the audience in those ways. They should be mindful of what response they want from the audience and be able to at least try to evoke that response. Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, I've been doing some research in anticipation of Picard Season 3 and how it might handle the return of various beloved crew members from TNG. Red Lionfish, Terois, Teroi Volitans apparently only have a lifespan of about 10 years. So even with the best 24th century veterinary care, Jean-Luc's faithful pal Livingston would have long reached the end of his natural life, and the various unnamed animal actors to play the role have long floated belly up. How do you think the writers of Picard Season 3 will address Livingston? I'm guessing that at the end of his natural life, Livingston's consciousness was transferred to a Sung-style android fish body, which, naturally, looks like Brent Spiner in a fish costume and will be his greatest Sung family performance yet. Bravo, Star Trek Picard 3 writers, bravo. And yes, of course, Stephen shared a picture of what the Brent Spiner portrayal of the android body of Livingston would look like, and I'm only too happy to share that with you now. So thank you to Stephen, and thank you to Dolly too, which created this this image from Stephen's prompt. I only wish it were true. Honestly, but see, like bonkers stuff like that is my only real hope for Picard Season 3. If the show just steers into the skid and goes, hey, let's make this motherfucker as rotten as we possibly can. Let's just drive it off a cliff and laugh and scream as we go. And it's entertaining in that way, then that's really all I can hope for. I have no hope whatsoever that it's going to turn out to be an actually good show. I would love for it to be entertainingly, outrageously, screamingly bad so that I can watch it and laugh and think, oh my God, can you believe this shit? That's about the best I think I'm going to be able to hope for. And Brent Spiner playing the android reincarnation of Picard's fish would be a perfect example of that. So thank you for putting that in my head. Thank you for giving me something that I can be disappointed about when it doesn't happen. Gareth, have you ever traveled out of the U.S. on holiday? If not, is there anywhere you would like to go? I'm from New Zealand, and John Cho seemed to really enjoy staying here while he was filming Don't Make Me Go. Personally, I have a holiday in Australia every couple of years. I've always thought it was odd that the Federation founded a penal settlement in New Zealand when Australia was the country that was originally a penal colony. One day soon, I'd like to travel around France when the cycling tour is on. Well, that sounds nice. I have never traveled outside the U.S. New Zealand does seem lovely. Like, I would not turn down an opportunity to visit New Zealand or Australia. They both seem absolutely lovely. It would be nice to visit Europe. I know some people in Europe who it would be fun to visit and let them show me around. People who live in France and Germany. and the UK. It would be cool to spend some time there. Um, I've always wanted to go to Japan. I'd love to see Japan. I'd love specifically to attend a live wrestling event in Japan. I'd like to, if it would be possible for me someday to go to like, you know, a wrestling card at like the Budokan or the Tokyo Dome or one of the classic Japanese wrestling venues. That would be really cool. So yeah, something like that would be nice. Like it's to be completely honest, it's not something that like burns in my heart to do. It's not like, oh, if I don't see, if I don't see Japan before I die, I'll just be overcome with regret. No, not so much, but it would be cool. It would be cool. So yeah, I've never gone, but there are a couple of places I would like to go. Duwan, I recently sat down to watch Supernatural season 15. I want to know, were you ever a fan of Supernatural, Steve? I have never watched a single episode. It's one of those shows that for whatever reason I just never got into and it never really interested me. If it's entirely possible that if I sat down to watch it now, I would think it was good. I mean, a lot of people really like it. Part of me wonders if, because like there are people who like it and then there are people who like really like it. There are Supernatural fans who are like absolutely over the moon for it. And I wonder if I would watch it and it would be kind of like a Firefly situation where I would watch it after having it hyped up like that for years. And then my reaction would be, I mean, this is okay, but these people need to calm the fuck down. Like it's good. It's a good show. It's a good, because that was my reaction to Firefly. Like it's good. It was a good show. But all these people over here who are like, it's one of the best shows in the history of television. What the fuck are you talking about? It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's good. Like, but it's good. Like that's about as far as I'm willing to go with it. But so no, but I've never seen I've never seen Supernatural. But if I ever do check it out, hopefully I will like it and it will turn out to have been worth the wait. General Contact Unit Problem Child. You know what I think is massively significant about the 1976 presidential election, at least in retrospect? It was the last presidential election that wasn't massively significant. Like, it was a, for the time, right-leaning Dem going up against a, for the time, moderate Republican. Basically, it wasn't the most important election of your life. If Ford had won, it wouldn't have been an existential threat to your country. Steve, can the U.S. ever return to elections that aren't that dire? Ever since 76, the consequences of your elections have got higher and higher until to now, where the GOP have taken back Congress and maybe only need to win one or two more times to end U.S. democracy altogether. I feel like you misunderstood most important election of your life in your video. It doesn't just mean this election really matters. It means if we lose this election, democracy might end. And you obviously can't have that be every election because you can't win Russian roulette forever. That's a good point. I mean, I would like to get back to a point where every election is not, if one side wins, it could be the end of democracy. I don't know how much longer it will be before we get back to that point, but I would like that. I think in order for that to happen, we need to seriously reduce the political power of the Republican Party. I think the Democrats need to string a couple of victories in a row together, forge a large and stable majority in both houses of Congress, hold on to the White House for a while, take back a lot of these state legislatures that have been Republican dominated for a while. And then as they do that, reverse all of these Republican imposed policies like voter suppression and gerrymandering, partisan redistricting that have tilted the balance in their favor, even though they don't really have the numbers to be winning all of these elections. And once that has been done, once the game has been unrigged so that it's more of a level playing field in these areas where the Republicans have managed to hold on to control, then I think that will incentivize the Republican Party to de-radicalize, at least to an extent. I mean, there'll always be Republicans. It'll always be a bad idea to vote for them. They'll always want to impose policies that will hurt people and damage the country. But I think if we can shrink them down to a manageable size and reduce their political power to make them a minority party for a while, for like a few decades, then the kooks and the weirdos and the nuts that have taken over the party and become the public face of the party will be pushed to the side, and more moderate Republicans will take over. And I want to stress again, that doesn't mean it would ever be a good idea to vote for them, because I don't think it's ever a good idea to vote for Republicans because they support shitty policies. But I think it would mean that not every election is, the United States on the precipice of doom. And that would be nice. I agree with you. That would be very nice. John Thomas Burns. Hey, Steve, hydrate before you dihydrate. You're a poet. You're a poet. Yay, democracy was saved because everyone got to vote and there were no controversies in the 2020 almost important U.S. elections. Or not, whatever. U.S. politics is boring. Anyway, by the way, spoken like a true American, which I know you are not, but you sound exactly like you live here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed Tuesday. For you, I'm sure it was very stressful, but for me, well, it was a Tuesday. R.I.P. Raul Julia. So humans will be leaving the Earth, meaning no matter where we are, all of us being human, we will be an invasive species. Yes, even you, white boy. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. If I'm going to work, I want my housing for free. Well, then you can get where you're going and you can build it yourself. And further afield, things are going to get very bad. Leaders will be far more powerful than before. Imagine landing on a planet and early on realizing you're the most powerful person in town and the rest of the planet. Anyway, the human race will be the invasive species. Thoughts? I guess technically you're correct. I would be far less concerned about the invasive species thing than I would about the authoritarian nightmare that you describe once we settle on different places. But I do think, look, it's a legitimate concern. If you imagine a future, like even someplace like Mars, if we establish a permanent human settlement on Mars, celestially speaking, Mars is pretty close, but even Mars, it takes months, if not years, to get there. So if we do set up a Martian colony and there is like a decent sized population there at some point, and the leader of the Mars colony decides to just kind of take over and impose a dictatorship and has enough means and support to do that, it's not as though people from Earth could just run over and set him straight. It takes a while to get there. It's a pretty isolated place. So hopefully that would not happen. I think that's one of the reasons why at first it would be a completely professional setup. It wouldn't be just, hey, who wants to come live on Mars? Come on. Like it would be professional trained astronauts who signed up for a long-term space voyage and take it seriously and can be trusted not to do that sort of thing, and hopefully it would be built up from there. And those values of, hey, let's not turn this into a dictatorship would be respected and would be perpetuated if it became like a long-term multi-generational thing. But I do think it's something that could potentially happen. It's happened before on this planet when people have started settlements in remote areas where there wasn't a lot of oversight, where it took a while to get there. We've had people kind of decide for themselves like, oh, hey, nobody can stop me from taking charge here and making this my own private, dictatorship. So I'm just going to do that. And it's not like there was anything to stop them. So, it's possible. And I think that would be a more pressing concern for me than us being an invasive species. Agent Meister, who's only just found out that there is no Dana, only Zool. Well, he should have asked me. I've known that for years. Peldor Joy, Steve, what do you think of the art of Kelly Jones? In case you need reminding, he was one of the main artists on the monthly Batman title back in the 90s, as well as cover artist on various titles during the Nightfall saga. He's best known for his eerie, uber gothic art and for giving the Dark Knight impractically long ears and capes. He wasn't everyone's pot of stew, but I've never seen a panel of his art that I didn't love. I'll admit that he's probably better suited to certain types of Bat stories than others, especially dealing with horror elements. His magnum opus is, to me at least, Batman Vampire, which is a trilogy of stories written by Doug Munch, documenting Bruce's descent into depravity after being bitten by Dracula. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jones's art in general and on the Vampire trilogy in particular, if you've read it. I envy you if you haven't, as you're in for a real treat. It is best consumed in one sitting at night and with some atmospheric music. I remember the Batman Dracula trilogy. There was, what was it? It was Batman Dracula, Red Rain, and then Bloodstorm, and then Crimson Mist, right? Or was it Crimson Mist and then Bloodstorm? I don't know, but I think that was the trilogy. Yes, it's been a long time since I've read them, but I have read them. I think I agree with you. I think Kelly Jones's art is well suited to stories like that. I think those stories, I would not honestly count them among my favorite Batman stories, but I do think they are very atmospheric. I think Kelly Jones's art is well suited to that kind of a horror themed story, and it's well suited to Doug Munch's writing as well. I think they make a really good creative team in that format. You know, if it's like a one shot or a mini series and it's a little bit off model as far as like how the character is usually depicted in the mainstream comics, and it has like some genre elements to it besides being a superhero story. Like I think in that situation, Kelly Jones is a very good artist, and Doug Munch is a very good writer. My problem with Kelly, and also I thought he was a great cover artist too. He did the covers for Batman and Detective Comics in the early 90s for a couple years, I think, and he drew great covers. He was a fantastic cover artist. But eventually he became the regular monthly penciler for Batman, for the monthly Batman title. And I did not think he was suited to that job at all. I did not think his art in that format, telling Batman stories that were not necessarily horror stories. I mean, Doug Munch always wrote things with a little bit more of an eye to the genre side of Batman. You know, they were a little more horror tinged than the other Batman writers. You know, he wasn't necessarily writing like hard-boiled detective stories. He was writing more atmospheric sort of, you know, with some visual flair type stories, and looking into sort of the macabre side of Batman. So, I mean, it's not like it was completely out of left field that Kelly Jones would be the artist, but I just don't think he was at all suited to be a monthly comic book artist. I think he is, he's better for covers and he's better for special projects like the Batman Dracula trilogy. I was not a fan at all of his monthly penciling duties on the Batman monthly title. I was very, very glad when another artist got that job, because I just did not think he did a good job. I remember one particular, there was a panel of his where it was Batman talking to Commissioner Gordon, and Commissioner Gordon's face looked like something that a toddler had drawn with a crayon on the back of a placemat at Denny's. Like, it just looked awful. And I was like, this isn't working for me. Like, I don't think this is the guy for the job. I think he's a great cover guy and he's great for Elseworld stories and shit like that, but this ain't working for me, you know? So I mean, I appreciate Kelly Jones's art in the right context. Tasby12, hey Steve, I went vegetarian in 2016 and I sometimes still get cravings for meat. Last week it was a McRib sandwich. I've heard you talk before about your cheat day and thought, I have a couple questions about it. First, how often do you have a cheat day? And second, how did you build your body back to the point where you could eat meat again with no ill effects? Cheat day for me is once a week. And it's Saturday, so cheat day is tomorrow. And, you know, to be quite honest, I never had any ill effects from eating meat. When I first went vegetarian, I went like full vegetarian and I didn't eat meat with the exception of maybe family dinners. You know, I never made a big deal about it at like holiday dinner. So if we went to like Christmas or Thanksgiving or something, I would eat the turkey or the chicken or whatever. But other than special occasions like that, I was completely no meat, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week for years. And then when I went back to eating meat occasionally, like for a cheat day, honestly, I didn't have any ill effects. There was no period of adjustment needed for me. I know that for some people it is like that is a concern, but for me, it was not a problem. So I can't really give you any pointers there because I didn't have to do that. I never felt any ill effects. Um, I mean, I would guess the way to do that is to just reintroduce it to your diet gradually. Like, even if you are doing like a cheat day and you're only going to eat meat once a week, maybe the first cheat day, just eat a little bit, you know, uh, and kind of build your way back up that way. Like eat a little bit, eat a small amount of meat for one meal, and just see how you feel. Like eat something bland, like, get like some roast chicken or something and just have a little bit for one meal and just see how you feel, see if it, you know, does anything uh unpleasant to you. And then just sort of work up to it from there. But like I said, for me, I didn't have to do that. I guess I was fortunate in that way. But yeah, so cheat day once a week for me. Some random geek reporting in from an anime convention. How completely in character. Since I'm at an anime convention and may or may not be in the live chat for this Ask Away, I thought about your list of favorite movies. Great list, but I do know there are some movies on there I haven't seen. I want to make my own list. Was going to, but then I thought this would be a good question. Since you and I are friends, granted not very close friends, which is understandable, but we had many conversations together, I'm curious. What movies do you think I would put on my favorite movies of all time list? Of course, favorite doesn't mean greatest. If someone said The Room or Troll 2 is their favorite movie of all time because those are so bad it's good, I would totally get that. And there are some great movies that are excellent and some of the best of all time, but because I didn't watch them on repeat over and over again growing up, they aren't necessarily my favorite. So based on the conversations we've had and the movies I have talked about, what is your guess of my favorite movies? I'm going to guess there's going to be some anime on it. I can't remember if I'm sure that Akira has come up at some point in our conversations, either in chats or on the patron hangouts. I remember saying that when I saw Akira, it wasn't that impressive to me. I didn't really think it was all that great, but somehow I remember you thinking it was good, or at least I would imagine you would like it more than I did. So maybe Akira would be on your list. Maybe, like the Miyazaki stuff, I would guess you would probably like, because I mean I really like the Miyazaki stuff too. Like I love Princess Mononoke and Howl's Moving Castle, and I mean, God, who doesn't love Miyazaki? So I would say probably some Miyazaki would be on there. In terms of non-animated stuff, I would guess you, like me, would enjoy a good samurai film. You know, you would like a Kurosawa movie. You'd like Yojimbo or Seven Samurai or something like that. I feel like we would probably have that in common. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to put money on any of these, but these are just guesses, based on what I know of your preferences. And let me tell me if I'm wrong or tell me if I'm right. That would be interesting to know. Definitely not Oasis, with certainly not another wrestling question. I'll perish the thought. As you may know, this week marks the 25th anniversary of the infamous Montreal Screwjob. A moment that obviously did not need to happen, but which Vince, Sean, and others made to happen rain, mud, shit, or blood. Obviously not a very happy moment in wrestling history. But do you think there are any wrestling screw jobs out there that people should know about yet don't? There was a screw job. I think there were several screw job, major, like high profile screw jobs in the 30s. And the one I'm thinking of, and I think they all involved Ed Strangler Lewis in one way or another. And the one I'm thinking of, and I don't remember all the details, but I think Ed Lewis was the champion. and he was defending in a 2 out of 3 falls match against another wrestler, and I can't think of his name. He wasn't like, um, it wasn't he wasn't like a one of the more well-known stars from that era. It wasn't like Stanislav Zabisco or something like that. But it was Ed Lewis defending the title against this other guy, and the plan was that it would go. It was 2 out of 3 falls, and the match was supposed to go to the third fall, of course, and Ed Lewis was supposed to win, and that was the plan. That was how the match was to go. And that had been agreed upon by all parties involved. And it went according to plan for the first 2 falls. I think the challenger won the first fall, and then Ed Lewis won the second fall, and then Ed Lewis was supposed to win the third fall as well. But what happened was, between the second and the third fall, the challenger, I don't know if he went backstage or if he rolled out of the ring, but somehow he managed to surreptitiously open a cut under his arm, like, on his, under his forearm or his chest around here, something like he opened a cut, and then he clamped his arm down like that, so that it didn't look like he was bleeding. And then the match started again, and he put Ed Lewis in like a headlock with the arm that had the cut on it, and then reacted as though Ed Lewis had bit him, and went to the referee and showed him the cut that he had made, but that he was now claiming Ed Lewis had caused by biting him. And the referee disqualified Ed Lewis, and the challenger won. That was not the planned finish of the match. The challenger had taken it completely upon himself to do this, and the referee felt, in order to maintain the appearance of legitimacy, the referee felt that he had no choice, faced with this evidence, but to disqualify Ed Lewis, even though the referee also knew that that was not supposed to be the finish. Like, he felt like, that, what else can I do? If I don't disqualify him for this, then people are going to know that this is all a work. And we don't want that. We don't want people to know that this isn't a real athletic contest. So the referee disqualified Ed Lewis, and the guy who wasn't supposed to win won. So, and I'm sure I've got some of the details of that wrong. I'm just going from memory, but that is one of the more hilarious screw jobs in wrestling history that I am familiar with. And I think that's one that wrestling fans should know more about. Black Cover 95. I enjoyed your This Is Fine video, and I look forward to this year's Thanksgiving special. I had a worrisome thought, though. Stuffy is a sapient being who has been canonically bought and owned. Does that mean the Stuffy series condones slavery? Dun, dun, dun. So much for your woke moralism, Steve. That last word should be italicized, but I don't think Google Forms lets you block italicized underlined words. Anywho, I love your work, and I hope your ballot goes through with no trouble. My ballot did go through with no trouble. In fact, I got a wonderful email from the Board of Elections the day before Election Day, informing me that my vote had been counted. So, yay. No, the Stuffy series does not condone slavery. Actually, this was a question that Dana asked when she and I first got together and started formulating ideas for what will eventually be a new season of Stuffy episodes. One of the first questions Dana asked was, how does that work? If Stuffy and the other stuffed animals are being portrayed as people, as you say, as sapient beings, and we've established that they are basically citizens of the society and they have equal rights to humans, and they have jobs and they vote and they take part in society, then how does the whole, buying a stuffed animal thing work? And we worked it out. We figured out a system that was satisfactory to us. And I should say satisfactory to Dana, because it was nothing I even remotely cared about up until then, but Dana wanted to have this straight, and have it in a way that made sense and was consistent with other things that we had talked about and we're going to be showing. So we worked it out, and I won't go into too many details with it now, because it's not real. I don't really think it's all that interesting in and of itself. But when we get to the point where we're actually making these episodes, it does come into play in one of the early episodes that we've written for the new season. So it is addressed in a way as to how this all works. So again, and if that is something that is important to you and that you're interested in, you have only Dana to thank for that, because it was nothing that I was ever going to bother describing or explaining or justifying or whatever. Like I am left to my own devices. I am perfectly happy for the Stuffy verse to be as weird and absurd and contradictory and internally inconsistent as it is. Right. Like, I don't think that's all that important and it doesn't matter to me, but it matters to Dana. And she wanted to have some kind of logic in place so that it would make sense. And we figured something out that we're both happy with. And so when those episodes come out, you will have that explanation as to, you know, how does it work with stuffed animals and people and all of that stuff. So there you go. But I'm not going to tell you yet, because if I just sit here and tell you, that's not interesting. Wolfie Basach, hi Steve. The question I was going to send turned out to be a mere 800 digits too many, so I'll have to edit it down and send it next time. Out of desperation, and with today's commemoration in mind, I've decided to ask a quick question based around a cautionary tale of what happened in a kitchen where I once worked during that year's 2-minute silence. As the time approached, I'd stacked up a load of pots and pans onto the machine rack and made sure they were secure. Halfway through the somber moment, it turned out that they weren't quite as secure as I thought, and the whole lot came crashing down, making a noise not unlike a piano which had been dropped out of a fifth-story window and onto Marjorie Taylor Greene's foot. So my question is, have you ever made an audio equivalent of an H-bomb when you really didn't want to? Not exactly. Not exactly, but I have done something kind of like that I think is actually probably more personally embarrassing to me than improperly stacked pots and pans falling. So up until about 2 years ago, I was married, and for a long time, my now ex-wife was the manager of a library, a branch of our county public library. And there was this one time when I was at the library, I went to visit her at the library, and I was hanging out in the library. I think I might've been on like one of the computers in the computer lab of the library, the public computer section. And I overheard her talking with someone at the desk, and the person at the desk was asking a question, and it was a question I knew the answer to. And the person just sort of left the question, you know, with my wife and said, well, if you figure it out, let me know. I'll be back in such and such, whatever. And so she wrote down the question, or she took a note as to look this up or find this out for this person. And the person she was talking to left. And after they left, like, I got up from my seat at the computer and I like sort of, ran over to the desk and I said, oh, the answer to the question is such and such, right? I can't remember what the question was or what the answer was, but it was something that I knew. And so I shared the answer with my wife really quick. And then I turned and ran back to my seat at the computer. And I wasn't really watching where I was going. I was kind of still looking back, but turning and going the other way. And I ran right into a spinner rack of DVDs that had always been there, that I knew was there, that had, like, there's no excuse for me running into it, except that I wasn't watching where I was going. And I ran right into it. And all the DVDs from the opposite side just flew out onto the floor. So, of course, I turned around and was like, whoops, and went around on the other side and picked up all the DVDs that had, been knocked off and put them back in their proper places, and then went back and sat down and tried to forget about it. But yeah, that happened. So, now that didn't happen during a somber moment. It wasn't, that didn't happen during like a moment of silence or during a memorial service or something. But it happened in a library where quiet is generally encouraged. So there you go. That's my version of that story. Yes, I have had an experience kind of like that. Joe McClory, about a month ago, I performed the Heimlich maneuver and likely saved a young woman's life. To this day, I still wonder if that was the moral choice. Whew, that's a hell of a way to begin a question. I was at work and it was a patient who has in the past and has since made attempts to end their life. It is my job to keep them safe, and I was praised for my quick action and may well have been punished if the young woman had succeeded. I have mixed feelings on this. I personally think that a person should be allowed to choose to die, but I stopped her. I didn't think about it at the time. I just did it, but I worry I betrayed my values to keep my job. And the fact people honored me for it feels, well, kind of gross. I try to do my best to be caring and fair and see that even the patients that I don't personally need to be there are as safe and comfortable as we can make them until the doctors and counties say that they can be discharged. But, well, I don't know if that makes helping people against their will okay. Not asking for advice, just your take. Well, if that is how you feel about it, I think that is completely valid. Personally, I don't think you did anything wrong. If a person, I agree with you that if a person chooses to take their own life, that is a choice that a person who is of sound mind and body should be allowed to make. I don't have an opposition to, assisted suicide or things like that. I think if you have come to the considered decision that you want to end your own life or have someone else end your life for you, in a premature way, or, through an intervention of some kind, I think people should have the right to make that choice. But as you said, this patient chose to do it while she was in a situation where, she was under the care of someone else, specifically you. It is your job to keep this person from doing that, and you did your job. And I understand if you feel, wrong about it because you think, well, a person should have the right to, choose to end their life if they want. I completely get that. But you were doing your job, and this person chose to attempt to end their life on your watch. And in that moment, you chose to intervene and to not allow that to happen. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But again, I'm not trying to talk you out of it. I'm not, like you said, I mean, you're not asking for advice, and I'm not trying to persuade you to feel any differently about it than you feel. But personally, from where I sit, I understand how you feel, but I don't think you did anything wrong. So take that for whatever it's worth. Jacob Monroe. Hello, Steve. Well, the midterms could have turned out a lot worse, though my fellow Democrats in North Carolina didn't turn out like I was hoping. Please vote Warnock if you live in Georgia. And I will second that with great gusto. Anyway, I'm thinking about applying to be a surface warfare officer in the Navy. My last job is currently shut down for repairs and renovations. The job market isn't very good around here, and all of my options seem to have dried up, and the recruiter says I should have a good chance at selection. It would give me job stability for the next 4 years, food and housing and health insurance, and might give me a much-needed resume boost. I'm sure I could do well at it, but does this sound like a good idea, or would it not be worth it? Would I be doing it for the wrong reasons? And I can't stress this enough. If anyone watching lives in Georgia, please vote Warnock. Again, please vote Warnock if you live in Georgia. I completely agree. When the runoff election happens next month, yes, for the love of God, please vote for Raphael Warnock. I mean, what is the what would be if you doing it because you need the job and it would improve your life and it would give you stability for a few years and it would improve your future prospects. Like, if that's the wrong reasons, then what are the right reasons? I mean, those all sound like really good reasons to me. If it's a job that you think you have a shot at getting and that you think you could do well and that would improve your life in both the immediate and the, longer term future. I mean, unless you're afraid that you're just going to hate it and you're basically going to be, crawling through the next 4 years by your fingernails, doing a job that you'd be good at, but that you're not going to enjoy. I mean, if it's that kind of situation, then yeah, maybe that's the wrong reasons. But if you also are assuming that it's a job you could at least tolerate, or if those aren't the right reasons, then what are? If it's something that you want to do and you think you could do and it would be good for your, situation, then I say go for it. What are the wrong reasons? It sounds like a good opportunity. If it's something you really want to do and it's something you really want to pursue, I say go for it, you know? And yes, once again, please vote Warnock if you live in Georgia. Isaiah Taylor. So this will be my last Ask Away stream during my 20s. I'll be turning 30 this year, the day after Thanksgiving, and I can't escape the fact that I'm getting older, even though I don't look it. Steve, I know you're not a big birthday person, but how do you think I should celebrate this momentous occasion? I think I might go to an LGBTQ bar and hang out there. I'm not LGBTQ, but it's the only bar I like in Tallahassee. Or hang out with some friends. It's been nice finding you guys. Do you think birthdays are special or just another day? And for a Best Buy Y2K joke, make sure you turn Isaiah's brain off at midnight on November 24th, 2022. Thank you. I don't want to wake up on November 25th thinking I'm 20. LOL. Happy Veterans Day, everybody. That's good. Yeah, make sure that you have the right number of digits in the date. Well, look, my birthday is not a big deal to me, and I would like it to not be a big deal to other people. But if your birthday is a big deal to you, especially your 30th, I mean, that's a milestone. You're rolling over from one decade to the next. Like, if that's important to you and that's a big deal, then I think it's totally cool that you make a big deal about it. And if you want to go out with some friends to a bar and hang out and have a good time, hell yeah, that's what you should do. I think it's great. I think it's very much a to each their own situation. My best way to spend my birthday is to stay at home and just do whatever I was going to do that day anyway. Like, that's how I would prefer to spend my birthday. I don't make a big deal about it. I don't ask other people to make a big deal about it. But that's me. Other people celebrate their birthdays in different ways, and I think that's cool. So you celebrate your birthday the way you want to, and it sounds like you're going to, and I hope you have a good one. Happy birthday. I'm glad you found us too. It's nice having you around. So happy 30th. Next question is from Russell, who says, good afternoon, Steve. I trust you're doing well. Another Ask Away, which means another NYPD Blue moment. I have recently finished the Sorensen era, and maybe it's because I watched it with an objective eye this time, but Sorensen might actually be the weakest partner, although I know Clark has his issues, and I will get to re-experience those as I go along. It's worth noting that during this era, we lose Costas, Martinez, and Fancy, and Kirkendall. So many things to comment on. I'm going to start with Kirkendall. What was your opinion about the whole Denby situation and Danny even hooking up with Diane in the first place? I have several other questions, but I'm going to start here for now. Also, at some point, I'm going to need to talk about Martens, because I often wonder if he was their original choice to lead the 15th as opposed to Dalto or Bale. Anyways, food for thought. You take care. See you soon. I think Sorensen started out really good. I think Sorensen's first season was really good, especially since, I mean, he came in literally, his first episode was the next episode after Jimmy Smith's character was killed off. So he had big shoes to fill right away. And even though Rick Schroeder as a person has turned out to be a shithead, as Danny, I thought for the first season, he did very good. I think what happened though, is the character kind of lost focus. And I think part of what happened is David Milch, who was the showrunner and the co-creator, left the show after Sorensen's first season. I think, I could be wrong. But he left, so his creative voice was no longer a part of the show. And he really got that Sorensen character. He kind of knew who he was and what he wanted to be, and was able to write him with those quirks that he had and make him into an interesting and kind of endearing character. And once he was gone, the character kind of lost that. And the show in general lost a lot of its personality and a lot of its energy. But I think Sorensen really suffered for that. And yeah, a lot of actors left. A lot of people who had been on the show for a while left. Sylvia left, and James left, and Fancy and Kirkendall. Kirkendall, I mean, when Kirkendall left, a bunch of other characters either had already left or were leaving, so it didn't feel like that big of a deal, but it kind of felt like, oh shit, they're losing Jill too, like she was, I liked Kirkendall, and I liked Andrea Thompson as an actor. I thought she was a really, really good part of the show. And when she left, I mean, I do think the show lost something, just because it was a character that had been around and had been established and was, a unique part of the series. And now she was gone. So I mean, I do think it affected the show. Yeah, and the Danny and Diane thing. I mean, I guess maybe you could say, well, they did it because it was so obvious that people assumed they wouldn't do it. And then they did it, because it's like, oh, Diane was Bobby's wife, and then Bobby died, and Danny was Bobby's replacement. So eventually he hooks up with Bobby's wife. It's like you would think like, no, they would never do that. They totally wouldn't do. Oh, they did it. Oh, they did it. I think it was that kind of situation. And it just I didn't hate it, but it didn't like super work for me either. And I didn't really last that long. I mean, they kind of turned it into, that was part of the story of like, this is weird, right? This, you didn't really want this to happen, did you? But it just was what it was. And yes, if you want to ask about Martens at some point in the future, I would very much be interested in talking about Martens, because I think I've mentioned before when I've talked about NYPD Blue before, Martens is one of my favorite characters on the show. And last question from Dana. Hi, Dana. Dana says, hi, Steve. Not so long a question this time. I've been on the Ensign's log for a while, and I've known you for a lot longer. You don't get out very much. And Jason lives all the way over in California. How the dickens did the two of you first meet? And what led you to be such close frackin' friends? P.S. Golly, aren't you just tickled that the red wave ended up not much more than a dad-blamed ripple? I wish this was some ripple right about now. Okay, so yeah, first of all, yes, I'm just pleased as punch that that the red wave wound up being more of a red ripple. Yes, I'm extremely happy and relieved. As you might imagine, Jason and I met over YouTube. Jason technically is still a YouTuber. I mean, he still has a YouTube channel. He doesn't really make videos for it these days, but Jason and I met because he was doing Opinionville at the time, and I was doing stuff on my channel, including the Stuffy videos. And for a little while, we had kind of a mutual admiration society where we would watch each other's videos and, appreciate each other's work and leave comments on each other's stuff. And I'd be like, oh, the guy who makes those puppet videos is really funny. And Jason would be like, oh, the guy who makes those stuffed animal videos is not nearly as funny as I am, but is kind of funny sometimes. And so we sort of were aware of each other that way. And then after the movie Man of Steel came out, I said I was going to do a live stream and have a roundtable where a bunch of us would get together and we would just all of us who had seen the movie would talk about the movie. And I think that I had invited maybe 3 or 4 people to come on with me, and Jason left a comment on, I think, the video I posted announcing it, saying, hey, I'm going to do this, in a week or so. And he said, oh man, it would have been so cool to be in on this, and I said, well, come on, like, you're in as far as I'm concerned. So Jason joined the Superman hangout that I did, talking about Man of Steel. And I think that was the first time we had actually talked, like, in person over Zoom or it was Google Hangout back then. But yeah, and that was the first time we actually talked. And he's Jason. He's a great guy, and we got along really good. And he was hilarious on the show. And we talked more after that, just privately, just exchanging messages and stuff and getting to know each other. And not maybe a year or so after that, he said, hey, I want to do a movie podcast, and I want you to co-host it with me. What do you think? Would you want to co-host a movie podcast with me? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And that was Late Seating. And it started out as a YouTube thing on Jason's channel, and it was a video thing. And then it kind of went dark for a little bit, and he brought it back as a podcast, which is the form that it has been in ever since. And it's been me and Jason reviewing movies every 2 weeks for the last probably 8 years, I think. And as we did the podcast, we got to know each other even more. And, we would talk during the show, and then we would talk before recording and after recording. And we just, we became best friends because we have we are different in a lot of ways, but we have very similar personalities and very similar senses of humor, very similar frames of reference. Jason's older than I am, so he remembers stuff from the 70s that I never really got to experience. But we have a lot of overlap, and we like a lot of the same things for a lot of the same reasons. And and I think we understand each other enough that when we do disagree about stuff and see things in different ways, like we understand why the other thinks the way they do. So we basically got to know each other through the work that we've done together. But it eventually grew into a real, genuine friendship. And like I said, I mean, he's my best friend. He's one of my favorite people in the entire world. And we met through YouTube. So thanks, YouTube, if nothing else, if for nothing else. Thanks for allowing me to meet my best buddy. So yeah, there you go. Good question. Thank you for asking. That is it for the patron and member question. So I will now turn to the live chat and see what is going on over there. Yes, Dana, because I wasn't born yet. That is true. I don't remember the 70s because I wasn't born yet. Yeah, Steve Schmeling, Ricky Schroeder is a douche. He is, unfortunately. He is. He's a Trumper, you know. So yeah. Yeah, he's a Trumper, he's an anti-masker, he's an asshole. 285 AD. Yeah, well, you say you weren't feeling optimistic. Honestly, that was the conventional wisdom. I mean, pretty much everybody assumed it's a midterm election, and historically, midterms go badly for the party that controls the White House. So people just assume, and the majorities that the Democrats held prior to the midterms were very small. I mean, the Senate was literally the vice president tiebreaker vote, and the House was not a huge majority. I think the majority in the House was only like 8 or 9 seats. So, I mean, yeah, it's not optimistic to say that, but it was also, it's what a lot of us expected. Michael Hanline, you got any whiskey or anything on hand to raise a glass for Kevin Conroy? I do not have any alcohol in the house. I am not much of a drinker. I drink only socially. And I don't really socialize all that much, so I have no alcohol in the house. And I'm not really a hard liquor guy anyway. I'm not a fan of whiskey or anything. So I will have to raise my lemon lime seltzer in tribute to Kevin Conroy. I mentioned it at the beginning of the show that Kevin Conroy has died, and yeah, I mean, it's a rough day for Batman fans, and when Dana and I did a collaborative video last year. I think, was it last year, Dana, or the year before? But we did a series of videos about Batman, and one of the videos we did was about the animated series, and we talked a lot about Kevin Conroy in that. And one of the things that we said, and I know I've said this in a couple other places too, is that Kevin Conroy's Batman was the Batman that pretty much everybody can agree on. No matter who your favorite Batman is. And Kevin Conroy was the favorite Batman for a ton of people. But even if he wasn't your personal favorite Batman, his was a Batman that pretty much everybody who liked Batman loved that version of the character. Even if it wasn't their very favorite. They loved the animated Batman, and they loved Kevin Conroy as Batman. Like, he was the Batman for all people for 30 years. And that is a tremendous achievement for any actor. And that is a wonderful gift that was given to us Batman fans. So it is a tremendous loss and a huge bummer. Jacob Monroe, what are your expectations for the Von Erich biopic? I don't know if I have any expectations, but I really hope it's good. I mean, the casting I've seen so far has been interesting, and Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich is kind of inspired You know, at first I was like, really? And then I thought about it and I was like, actually, yeah, I think I can kind of see it. I mean, yeah. So I'm hopeful. I mean, the Von Erich family, there are, I mean, God, if you're going to do a movie about one of the major wrestling families, obviously you would, I mean, the Von Erichs is probably the one you'd want to start with because they have such a, I mean, their story, my God, it's like a Greek tragedy. So, you know, hopefully the movie does the story justice. You know, hopefully it's not just a standard Hollywood biopic just about wrestlers instead of singers or whatever. I hope it's a good movie. I don't really have any specific expectations, um, but I hope it's good, and I will certainly watch it when it comes out for sure. Here's a super chat from Sinister Intelligence. I may also do some THC gummies and dance to some 90s dance music like Everybody Everybody by Black Box. It came out in 1990. I may do a 90s party. That's well, like I said, you celebrate your birthday how you want, man. That sounds great. That sounds great. Daryl Lett says, just a shout out to my guy Sheldon Neely, who won re-election as mayor of Flint, Michigan to a second term. Yay! Hell yes. Shout out to Mayor Neely for winning re-election. 255 AD, how do you feel about me saying Carter was right of center in the 70s Democratic Party? Because I think that's both the case, and he can be a Bernie Dem today without really changing his views. Yeah, just because of the way the party has shifted. I mean, yeah, I do think that Carter was viewed as, at the very least, a relative moderate in the party at the time, if not right leaning. You know, I mean, I don't think it's like unfair to say that, to characterize him that way. And your point just now about, you know, how he seems maybe further to the left now than he was in the 70s because of the way the party has shifted. I think that's, yeah, I think that's also very fair. Steve Schmeling says Gallagher died too. Thoughts? Yeah, actually, I said this on Twitter earlier. Gallagher dying on the same day as Kevin Conroy, thereby guaranteeing that everybody will be thinking about Kevin Conroy and nobody will give a shit about Gallagher dying, is the most Gallagher thing ever. It is the most Gallagher way to die that there could have been. And if there is an afterlife, Gallagher is no doubt in hell right now complaining about it. I will say this. When I was a kid, I was a huge Gallagher fan. Gallagher played the Maryland Theater here in Hagerstown a couple of times when I was in middle school, and I went to the shows. Like, I saw him live and laughed my ass off when I was 13. And honestly, I have watched his stand-up specials are available streaming. I think they're on either Tubi TV or Freevee. I can't remember which one, but you know, one of the streaming services that's free with ads. And you know, I have watched them in the relatively recent past and kind of shook my head. There's something about Gallagher's stand-up specials. I no longer consider them to be good comedy. For the most part, every once in a while, he'll surprise you and he'll actually have something that is kind of smart and kind of well crafted, at least for him. I no longer consider them very good comedy for the most part, but there is something fascinating about them. There's something fascinating about the dynamic he had with his audience. How when you watch a Gallagher show, especially when he was at his peak in the early 80s, if you watch like Gallagher the Maddest, which is his most popular and most widely seen stand-up special, that's almost like watching an infomercial. Like, the laughter from that audience is like a conditioned response. It's almost like they're laughing because they were told to laugh. And I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that's literally what happened or if that's, you know, if that's just the connection that he cultivated with his audience. So they just reacted that way because that's how they reacted. And it just feels weird and kind of cultish from the outside, but that's how it felt. You know, he would say stuff that like just isn't funny and isn't even like a joke. And people would die. Like, they would just die. So, you know, but so it's interesting. It's very interesting to watch a Gallagher special now and kind of view it with a critical eye and think, what is going on there? John Burns, American wrestling families, if Canadian hearts. Well, yes, of course, if Canadian hearts and if Samoan Anuai and if Texas/Mexican Guerreros, you know, yeah, there's all kinds of great wrestling families. I mean, obviously the Hearts have had some tragedy, you know, with the most obviously with the death of Owen, but I don't think any wrestling family can compare to, in terms of tragedy, can compare to the Von Erichs. I mean, the Von Erichs is, like I said, it's like a Greek tragedy. It's awful. It's a horrible, heartbreaking story. But the Von Erichs and the Hearts, I would say the Von Erichs and the Hearts are very similar to one another in that they both come from old school wrestling territories, where they, meaning the family, like the father was, their father was the patriarch of the territory, Stu Hart in Calgary and Fritz Von Erich in World Class in Dallas, and their kids, their sons, were the big stars of the territory. And the Von Erichs and the Hearts both had that situation. And they both came up and became stars in their territories in the late 70s and early 80s, which was the last golden age of the territories before Vince McMahon took over the WWF and expanded nationally and set about systematically destroying the territory system so he could keep all the money himself. So yeah, they are very similar in a lot of ways, but I do think the Von Erich story, just because of how just so much tragedy, so much death, so much, you know, I think the Von Erich story is a lot sadder than the Hart story. I mean, if the Hart story would be as sad as the Von Erichs if, you know, if it had been that like all of them except one had died the same way that Owen did, or under similarly, you know, tragic circumstances, then you would say that maybe the Hearts were as tragic as the Von Erichs. But the way it stands, ooh, damn, the Von Erichs. Another super chat from John Burns. So Gallagher dying is like the Challenger explosion, pushing the death of L. Ron Hubbard out of the news headlines. Yeah, I guess sort of. Yeah, yeah. Well, Gallagher would be L. Ron Hubbard, and Kevin Conroy would be the Challenger explosion. But yes, absolutely. Kurok 2011 with a super chat also wanted to comment on your Quantum Leap recent video. It has a lot of promise. I just hope it doesn't end up like The Blacklist, dragging issues on and on. Yeah, I mean, I've never watched The Blacklist, so I can't speak from experience, but I know that, you know, that is a problem with a lot of shows, especially a lot of shows that try to do serialized storytelling. You know, that like the pacing is just off. The bad pacing with serialized stories is the bane of modern television and modern streaming, especially. It afflicts good shows and bad to varying degrees. Yeah, badly paced stories is a rampant issue for sure. 255 AD says, you know that I Miss TV video you made. What do you think your 8-year-old self would react if you told him you can watch anything online when you grow up? I mean, he would have been happy. And you know, it's one of those things, like when you stop and think about it, as I do sometimes stop and think how different things are now than they were even 15 or 20 years ago. And certainly when I was a kid, it would have been unthinkable. It would have been unthinkable to 8-year-old me, if someone, myself from the future or anybody, had sat me down and said, you like He-Man, right? Well, by the time you get to be in your 30s, you'll be able to own every single episode of He-Man for not that much money, and you'll be able to watch any episode whenever you want. I would have not known what to say. Like, it would have been completely outside of my experience, because that is just not remotely how it worked. Even shows that had episodes released on VHS tape, which, you know, happened, it was like you'd get a tape and there'd be like 1 or 2 episodes on it. The idea of releasing the entire series on home video and being able to buy it for an affordable price, and then you just had it, like that was unthinkable. And then to take it a step further and say, oh, and eventually it'll get to a point where you won't even need to buy it. It'll just come through your TV. There'll be services that you can subscribe to through your TV, and you can just watch whatever you want, anytime you want. That would have been mind-boggling. And yet, look how quickly we got used to it. It's extraordinary. 2-5 AD goes on, like, I'm also a bit nostalgic about the way TV used to work, but I remember my mindset back then well enough to realize my kid self would be like, that'd be awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My kid self would have done a backflip. Yeah, Dana, exactly. Maybe my 8-year-old self would have been like, well, why can't we do that now? You're probably right. Mr. System, 96. Yes, busy day for super chats. Thank you, everybody, and keep them coming. Yeah, baby. Kirok 2011 with the super chat says, I hate to disagree with you, but I actually like Magic and Jen and the actors who play them. I think they too can show promise. Plus, and that's part 1 of 2. I can't wait for part 2 to come. While we're waiting for part 2, Jacob asks, have you seen the current generation of Von Erichs in MLW? A little bit. I don't watch a lot of MLW, but yes, I have seen, what are their names? Marshall and, I can't think of the other one's name, but yes, the Kevin's sons, the Von Erichs. I've seen them wrestle a little bit, and they seem good. Like, they seem good. They're, I don't know if they're as good, or I don't know if they'll ever be as big of a star as their dad and their uncle were back in the territory days, but I think they're good. Anyway, here's the second part of Kirok's question. Magic has a connection to Sam, which I'm still hopeful they will bring him back. Well, like I said in my video, especially with Ernie Hudson, because I do think Ernie Hudson's just screen presence brings something to the show. It's not so much, I have nothing against the actors, and I don't really have anything against the characters as such. I just wish, if they're going to be on the show, I feel like they should have something important to do. And so far they haven't. Like Magic is said to be the guy in charge of Quantum Leap. He's like the boss. But as Allison Pregler pointed out on Twitter, what's Magic's job? Like, they say, like, oh, he's the boss, he's the head of the program. Yeah, but what does he do? And like, why is he in the show? Like, so nothing against the characters. I'd love to see the characters turn out to be fascinating, wonderful people that I cared about and wanted to see. But at the moment, they're not really doing anything. And I hope that changes. I really do. Marshall and Ross. Yes, Ross was the other one. Thank you, Jacob. Steve Schmeling says, were there any shows you didn't or couldn't watch as a kid, but you've since picked up as an adult with streaming? There are shows that I was only able to watch intermittently that I have now seen every episode of thanks to streaming, like Knight Rider. Like, I always liked Knight Rider, but I was never like a massive fan of it like I was of MacGyver. Like, I had seen every episode of MacGyver, just through watching it when it was originally on, and then also seeing it in reruns and on cable and stuff. Like, before they ever came out on streaming or DVD or whatever, like, I had seen all the MacGyvers already. But with Knight Rider, that wasn't the case. With Knight Rider, I would catch it if it was on a rerun or something, but I hadn't seen like every episode until it was like on Netflix. And then I plowed through it and I was like, God damn it, I love this show. Where has this show been all my life? But I can't think of a show that I never saw any of. And that was on like when I was a kid and I've discovered. I'm sure there may be one, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. Kane 20C deathmatch time. Satchel Paige versus Sandy Koufax. Oh boy. See, that's tough because Satchel only got to pitch in the majors for the last few years of his active career. So we may never know exactly how good Satchel really was. But God, Sandy Koufax was amazing. I wouldn't want to bet against Sandy Koufax just because I think Sandy Koufax was a once in multi-generational talent. But I don't know. Something tells me if we could have seen Satchel, if we had better records, because unfortunately the Negro Leagues records were very fragmented, and there's precious little film footage that survives of Negro League players actually playing in the Negro Leagues in their prime. So a lot of the evidence of how great Satchel was in his prime is anecdotal, and we don't know how trustworthy that is. But something tells me Satchel in his prime might have been able to take old Sandy Koufax in a pitcher's duel. I don't know. I think I'd have to go with Satchel. But man, it's tough because goddamn, we know for a fact that Sandy Koufax was amazing. Sinister Intelligence with a super chat. I'm putting together a holiday movie starter pack. One is Titanic, The Iron Giant, and A Christmas Story. Any other suggestions? Oh, National Lampoon's Christmas, I would say, should be on there. Miracle on 34th Street, my favorite Christmas movie, Miracle on 34th Street. The original, the Edmund Gwynn one with Natalie Wood and Maureen O'Hara. Yeah. Miracle on 34th Street. The Alastair Sim version of A Christmas Carol, which I believe was originally titled Scrooge. But either way, sometimes you can find it on DVD titled A Christmas Carol. Sometimes you can find it titled Scrooge, which I think was the title it was released under. But Alastair Sim plays Scrooge. And that's my favorite movie of A Christmas Carol. I would recommend that too. Super chat from Nick Jeffrey says, "Hi, Steve. Not sure if anyone else has asked yet, but have you seen Black Adam yet? I watched it recently and quite enjoyed it." I have not seen it. I'm waiting until it comes out streaming. I'll rent it or catch it when it comes out on a streaming service. I did not really want to see it badly enough to go to a theater to see it. I hope it's good. Like I fully intend to watch it at some point. I hope it's good, but no, I have not seen it yet. Mr. System 96 said, "Just seen All Quiet on the Western Front this evening. It took a different direction than the original." I watched that a couple of days ago, actually, and I thought it was very good. I don't think it holds up to the original. I don't think it's that good, but keep in mind, like, I think the original is one of the greatest films ever made. Like, there's very few movies I would put above the original All Quiet on the Western Front. So the new version is not that good, but that's not necessarily an insult because, to say like, well, it's not one of the greatest films ever made. Well, few films are, but I thought it was very good. I liked it a lot. I really didn't care for the cutaways to the armistice negotiations. I see what they were trying to do, but I don't think we needed to go to those as often as we did. I feel like maybe just once toward the end would have been good to make the point and, establish the contrast between the people fighting the war and the people in charge of it. I do think that kind of detracted from it a bit, but overall, I thought it was excellent. I thought it was really, really good. Yeah. Oh, Joe McClory says, "Question: between a great showing in Weird and standing up to JKR, would you be willing to gush about Daniel Radcliffe?" Hell yes. Daniel Radcliffe is awesome. Yes. Yeah, he was so good in the Weird Al movie. He was so good and so funny. And what made him funny is that he played it absolutely straight. That was so perfect. You never saw him wink or give any indication that he knew he was being funny. Like, he played it totally straight, and it was perfect. He was brilliant in the Weird Al movie. And yes, and just generally, he's great. Yes, I love the fact that he made it a point to back, a couple years ago, he did this. He stood up and said, "Hey, I don't feel about trans people the same way that J.K. Rowling feels. I am supportive of trans people. I love trans people. I think they deserve better treatment and equal rights. And, she doesn't speak for me." And then just recently, he reiterated it when somebody asked him about it. So goddamn right. Good for him. And good for Emma Watson too, because she's done the same thing. And I think Rupert Grint as well. Have all three of the main stars have come out and said, "Nope, she doesn't speak for us." So good for all of them. But yeah, Daniel Radcliffe was fantastic in Weird, and seems like a really good dude. So hell yes, I would love to gush about Daniel Radcliffe. A couple of super chats came in. Correct 2011, Steve, you forgot It's a Wonderful Life. You know what? I used to not like It's a Wonderful Life, but I would say I would recommend It's a Wonderful Life now. That's something I can thank late seating for. I never used to like It's a Wonderful Life. I thought it was corny and sentimental, and it had been many years since I watched it. And then I watched it again for late seating. Actually, that was it was one of our Christmas movies, and we did the commentary track where Jason and I watched the movie and record like a commentary track that then our listeners are supposed to play it as they watch the movie, like riff tracks. Um, but I watched the movie beforehand before I watched it with Jason, just so I could get an idea of it, and because I hadn't watched it for a while. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that I really liked it. It was like seeing it with fresh eyes, and I don't know what changed, but I would now consider that a great movie, and I never used to think that. So yeah, I would say It's a Wonderful Life belongs in the list, although I still prefer Miracle on 34th Street. Sinister Intelligence also says, and no Home Alone. Boy, you want to talk about one of the most overrated movies. I have never been a fan of Home Alone. That's another one. Home Alone we watched for our Christmas commentary track episode of late seating one year, and God, what a rotten movie! What a rotten movie. Not a fan of Home Alone. And super chat from Nick Jeffrey. Best two Christmas movies, Die Hard and Gremlins. I mean, I love both movies. I can't fault you there. Wow 3620 says, R.I.P. Kevin Conroy. Any good BTAS stories? How does this rank in favorite Batman? Well, as I said earlier, Kevin Conroy, he's sort of the consensus pick for everybody's favorite Batman. I think that's what was so wonderful about his version of the character, was that everybody liked that version of Batman. Even there were like, I never counted the animated Batman as my favorite Batman. But I mean, when you watch that show, it still holds up, especially the original, like the original, what, 60 episodes, 120 episodes, whatever the original run was before they stopped to do Superman, and then they started up again and did the new Batman Adventures, which I don't think was nearly as good. But the original run of Batman animated series from like 1992 to 94, I think, that it still holds up. There are some bad episodes. There are some rotten episodes, and generally speaking, I do not rate it as highly as like its most enthusiastic fans, but it still holds up. I mean, and it's a show that, like, if you're a Batman fan, you can pull up one of those episodes on a streaming service or pop in a DVD and watch a Batman animated series episode and have a perfectly awesome 22 minutes, watching a really cool animated Batman story. Like, it's terrific. In terms of like Batman the animated series stories, like, I mean, favorite episodes, Heart of Ice is one that everybody always says is great. I always really liked the Ra's al Ghul two-parter, The Demon's Quest. I think my favorite episode is Baby Doll. I think that's been my favorite episode of Batman the animated series since the first time I saw it. Really, like, surprisingly psychologically complex for a kid's show. The villain has a lot of layers and a lot of complexity and a lot of kind of really heavy tragedy to her that you would not expect from a kid's series. So I've always admired that episode a lot. Nick Jeffrey says, to follow up on my super chat, Black Adam makes me think that DC has started to learn, despite Snyder's best attempts to dissuade them otherwise, that superheroes can be fun. Well, that sounds good. I hope that is the case. The Rock kind of said, The Rock didn't call out Zack Snyder, of course, because The Rock is a politician before anything else, and he would not want to needlessly, start controversy with anybody. But The Rock had said something similar, in his various social media posts leading up to the movie's release, basically saying, like, we've decided to, it's our version of the DCEU, and there's room to have fun. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. That would be nice. Yes, please. So I'm glad that you found that in it, and I hope I find it in it when I watch it. Michael Handeline with a super chat. Have you read Conroy's short comic Finding Batman? Yes, absolutely. And it is one. And if anybody hasn't read that, I would recommend seeking that out and reading it because it's just wonderful. Um, and I think he just published it last year, I think, didn't he? Or was it earlier this year? But yeah, and it details how his uh, he was able to draw on his personal insights as a gay man, and I think he was closeted at the time, um, and sort of draw on that experience of leading a double life, and that enabled him to relate to Bruce Wayne on a certain level, and it's a really well done, well written. Conroy wrote it himself. It's really really nice. If anybody hasn't read it. Dana says, "I can't help loving Batgirl's return." Yes, that's the one with has that great line from Roland Daggett, right? Where Batgirl and Catwoman are like tied up, and they're like, "What are you going to do? Are you going to lower us? You know, are you going to tie us on the end of a hook and lower us slowly into a vat of acid or something?" And Roland Daggett says, "Nah, you superhero types always find ways of getting out of stuff like that. I'm just going to have you shot." And then dump you in the acid so it'll get rid of your body. He's like, "Oh, what a great line." If only more Batman villains would have that kind of intelligence and insight. Um, Super chat from Kirak 2011. Speaking of Christmas films, did you know they're coming out with another sequel to A Christmas Story starring the original Ralphie? Yeah, I've seen the trailer. I mean, it doesn't really look. It's like, oh, it looks like, oh, remember this? It's like it looks like a legacy sequel, and it doesn't really excite me. Um, Steve Schmeling, have you watched Young Rock? What do you think? I have not watched Young Rock. No, I've never watched Young Rock. Um, Jacob Monroe asks, what was Hulk Hogan's worst feud in the WWF? Um, Boy, I'm trying to think. Like in his original run, like from '84 through '93. I mean, there are a lot of feuds where it's they're bizarrely booked, where actually in most of Hogan's feuds, he is totally acting like the heel, and the heel by all rights should be the babyface, because the thing that they're mad at Hogan about is completely reasonable, like it was due to Hogan being an asshole, but yet we're supposed to cheer for Hulk and boo for the heel. So there was a lot of that, but they still wound up being entertaining feuds, and they had good matches. So it's really tough to pick a worst Hogan feud in the WWF. Um, Maybe with Sergeant Slaughter in 1991, just because of the tasteless war angle. They went for the rah rah patriotism thing in the middle of the actual Gulf War, and had Sergeant Slaughter turn heel and become an Iraqi sympathizer when the United States was actually at war with Iraq. I mean, and like it was typical foreign man bad wrestling booking. It was, the foreign menace and Hulk Hogan as the American hero coming in to save the day. It was probably that one, I would say. Probably that one. Which ironically, given what I just said about how Hogan always was the unspoken heel, the Sergeant Slaughter feud is one of the few major feuds that Hogan had, where Slaughter was clearly the heel and Hogan was clearly the babyface. And yet, you know, the feud itself didn't turn out all that great, and because of the political stuff, and how in what poor taste it was, and just how it was just easy, like cheap heat stuff. Slaughter setting the American flag, or setting the Hulk Hogan shirt on fire and denouncing the United States. It was just cheap heat stuff. Um, Hogan's feud with Sid Vicious, or Sid Justice, in '92 was better than it had any right to be, mostly because of Sid, because Sid um, was such an entertaining heel. And again, like Hogan was what the thing that precipitated Sid's turn was Hulk Hogan being a dick. So like, um, Tweet 5AD says, please go back to all my cues. I posted them in a row. Okay, let me go back and find them. Okay, here we go. After midterms, I was happy for about 40 hours. Then a podcast I was listening to mentioned Biden's approval rating, and I started stressing about 24. How long did you last? I'm not stressing yet. I mean, I am a little worried about 2024, especially if Biden runs again. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I'm not quite stressing yet. You know, I think I'm still okay. And your next one was, in the Middle Ages, if you put on a play or show, everyone in the community would see it. Were early TV writers operating on a similar assumption? Kind of, yeah, because TV was all free broadcast. So I think maybe they were. The assumption was that, you know, that it was going to be a public show, that everybody with a TV could see it, because there was no pay TV back in the earliest days. I want to answer Mr. System 696's question really six. Have you seen the Dam Busters? If so, what's your? I have not seen the Dam Busters. So, quick answer. 255 AD says, how does White Castle compare to McDonald's? I actually prefer McDonald's. White Castle is good. Like, I have nothing against White Castle at all. I think I've only actually been to an actual White Castle restaurant maybe once, because we don't really have any around here. So I've just eaten McDonald's a lot more, and maybe that's why I would prefer it. But I mean, nothing against White Castle, but I would go for McDonald's. 255 AD also says, I once heard a wrestler say something like, it's not rigged, but it's not fake. Just because you know who's going to win doesn't mean you really might not hurt each other. Is that accurate? Yes, it is. That's completely right. I mean, it's what's called a work. I mean, it's cooperative. Wrestlers are not trying to hurt each other. They're supposed to be protecting each other. The art of wrestling is supposed to be that you make it look like you're kicking the shit out of each other, but actually you're protecting each other and you're not hurting each other. But even though that is the intent, yes, accidents can still happen. And, yes, you can still get seriously hurt. Yeah, so that's completely accurate. 255 AD says, what's the ethical rationale for your cheat days? Like, is it that you're not supporting the meat industry too much if you only do it rarely? To be honest, my vegetarianism was never like, was never primarily an ethical thing. I mean, I acknowledge that it's more ethical not to support the meat industry because the meat industry is terrible. But mostly me going vegetarian was a combination of health and cost. You know, like, it's cheaper to be a vegetarian and it's healthier to be a vegetarian, I think. So that's the main reason why I am still mostly why 6 days a week I am a vegetarian, because I think it's better for my health and it's less expensive. So those are the two main reasons. So I never really felt like I needed an ethical justification to eat meat 1 day a week, because the ethical concerns, which I acknowledge and I agree are real, but they were not what motivated me to become a vegetarian in the first place. And I think that was the last one, wasn't it? 255. Sinister Intelligence, All Quiet on the Western Front, Netflix brutal movie. Yes, very brutal, very brutal. Jacob Monroe says, is there any Democrat you can see rising like DeSantis has for the GOP? I mean, there are a few that have been spoken about as potential contenders next time that weren't necessarily in the game last time. I know some people have said, like, if Warnock pulls it off and wins re-election, that his name might be in the hat. I don't think he would actually run. I don't think Raphael Warnock is interested in running for president, but he is someone who, you know, could potentially be a star in the party on a national level in the future if that's what he wants, and if he's able to win and keep winning and hold that Senate seat in Georgia. Ditto for Fetterman in Pennsylvania. You know, again, even though he's brand new, like, he literally just got elected to the Senate, he has not served a day of his term yet, but you know, he could potentially be a major player in the party. And I'm sure there are others too that I'm just not thinking of. Carper or Cripper, or I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Indica, sativa, or hybrid. I have never tried any of them, so I cannot say. I am completely inexperienced in that. What do I say? I say I'm straight edge except for booze. Sinister Intelligence says, glad you elected your first black governor. Me too. Wes Moore, buddy. I was so happy to vote for him. What was really cool is last year, Dana and I did a readaway series where we read and reviewed The Other Wes Moore, which is the book that Wes Moore wrote that was kind of the thing that put him on the map originally. And I had no idea he was even going to run for governor. But, you know, I knew he was from Baltimore. I knew he was from my state. And Dana has been teaching that book in her classes for years. So she knew who Wes Moore was before I even did. And then we read his book and in our live stream series. And then, like, all of a sudden he's running for governor. And I was like, holy shit, Wes Moore's running for governor and he might win. And I voted for him in the primary. And he won the nomination in the primary. And then I, of course, voted for him in the general election. And he whipped ass. He got like 60% of the vote. He fucking murdered that motherfucker. I was so happy to see that. And I'm so glad that he won. And yes, the first black governor of Maryland, which is a really cool thing in and of itself. And specifically because it is Wes Moore, who seems like a really good dude, is promising I think he gave a speech today, said he's promising a fearless administration. I would love to see him just become a firebrand conservative and support, you know, a lot of really progressive reforms. And Maryland is a fairly progressive state already, but we all have a long way to go, no matter how progressive we are. And I'm very excited to have Wes Moore as my governor for at least the next 4 years. That is awesome. I am super happy about that. Nick Jeffrey with a super chat says, given your love of comics, have you ever read any Judge Dredd 2000 AD comics from the UK? They once had a Dredd Batman crossover, Judgment on Gotham. I have read the Judge Dredd Batman crossover, but that is the only Judge Dredd comic I've ever read. Unfortunately, I've heard good things about it. But no, I read the Batman. Has there only been one? I feel like there might have been another one, but I know I read the first one. If there's been a second one, I don't know if I've read that, but I read the first one. And I thought it was good. 255 AD says, have you, with another super chat. And thank you, by the way, thank you everybody for all the super chats. Have you ever eaten 7-Eleven pizza? Yes, of course I have. Yes. 255 AD says, thanks for not saying I cheated the super chat system. I don't think you did. I thought it was okay. Gavin Newsom, yes, Sinister Intelligence. That's another one who's like a rising star. And Wes Moore, Wow 3620 says, what do you think about Wes Moore's political future? I think it could be quite bright. I mean, if he serves maybe a term or two as governor of Maryland, he's relatively young. He would still be relatively young. Let's say he's a two-term governor of Maryland, or let's say he serves a full term as governor of Maryland and gets reelected and then decides he wants to run for president, like in the middle of his second term. Maybe let's just say it goes that way. So in roughly 6 years, he runs for president. He would still be relatively young. He would hopefully have a good record to run on because Maryland is a democratically controlled state. We have a democratically controlled state house and Senate. So he could hopefully have a laundry list of progressive accomplishments to point to as he's running for president. He would be young. He's a great politician. He's a great speaker. He's a great personality. I would fucking love to see Wes Moore run for president. Is he going to? Does he want to? Is that even, on the horizon for him? I have no idea, but it could be. And that would tickle me to death. Nick Jeffrey, I'm sure I've eaten more than 711 pizzas. I probably have too. Well, 255 AD, if you think that you cheated the super chat system. That is between you and your conscience. I was not prepared to say that. The way I see it, you post a lot of questions anyway. You know, this time you posted a question that happened to be in the form of a super chat and gave me some money. So I was happy to go back and read your other questions. It's, you know, I don't feel cheated, but if you feel like you cheated me, that's, like I said, that's, you know, that's between you and your conscience, my friend. As far as I'm concerned, we're square. But if you feel like we're not square and you want to give me some more money, like, that's totally fine too. But that's not where I'm at with it. I think we're okay. 7-Eleven in a row. We're down to 5 minutes before the hour, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. So if anybody has any last questions they want to get into the live chat before I end the show, go ahead and think of them and throw them in there now, and I'll try to catch a few right before I wrap up. But in the meantime, while you're doing that, let me remind everybody that if you enjoy my YouTube channel and the work I do here, you can support my channel by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, or by becoming a member by clicking the join button. YouTube is my job. My YouTube channel is my full-time job. It's how I keep the lights on. It's how I pay the bills and put food on the table. And if my videos are important to you or have meant anything to you or provided you with any insight or entertainment, and you can afford it, I would really love it if you became a patron or a member. I would love your support. And if you do become a patron or a member, one of the perks is you can submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away live streams. So that's, you know, something really cool that if you want to support the channel, it's a little benefit that you get. Also, don't forget that in addition to YouTube stuff, I also co-host a couple of podcasts that are part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. The Late Seating podcast that I co-host with the great Jason Harding, where we review classic films and see whether or not they deserve their reputation, be it good or bad. The next episode of Late Seating is our review of the 1980s puppet fantasy film Labyrinth. So you can listen to that and find out what me and Jason think of Labyrinth. And also, the other podcast is the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast, which stars Jason and myself and Dana, who is in the chat. And we play low-ranking Starfleet officers serving aboard a certain Federation starship that is carrying out its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, etc., etc. If you like Star Trek stuff, and especially if you like funny Star Trek stuff, Star Trek themed comedy, I think you'll really enjoy the Ensign's Log. Links to that are in the description. Also, don't forget, speaking of Dana, Dana actually has a couple of big events coming up. Dana has her usual twice monthly live stream coming up tomorrow on her YouTube channel, which is the Saturday 6, talking about some of the positive things that have happened both in her life and in the news over the last couple of weeks. That's tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Dana's channel, and the link to that is in the video description of the stream that you're watching right now, this one. And also, in addition to the Saturday 6 tomorrow, which I hope you'll all come to and watch because I'll be there in the live chat, but in addition to the Saturday 6 tomorrow, on Dana's channel a week from tonight, next Friday, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, Dana is having her 2-year chaniversary. The 2-year anniversary of her starting her YouTube channel. It's going to be a special live stream where she's going to talk about sort of what she's done on her channel up until this point and hang out and have fun with everybody in the live chat. And there will be prizes. I never given you all prizes. Dana will be giving away prizes on her chaniversary stream on Dana's YouTube channel next Friday, starting at 6. So make sure to be there for that. And we will certainly, I'm sure Dana will talk about it on the Saturday 6 tomorrow. And Dana and I will talk about it when we get together to do Trek Reluctantly next Wednesday as well. But keep your calendar open for next Friday for Dana's chaniversary. That's going to be really, really awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Let me go back to the chat and pick up a few last questions. I see a few have come in. Thank you again for the super chats, everybody, by the way. That's really cool. Yes, Kirak, exactly. I won't be saying no to more money. Sinister Intelligence says we did have a Gen Z candidate win here in Florida. Yeah, I saw that. That was awesome. One of the young, I think the youngest or one of the youngest people elected to Congress in quite a while. Yeah, Nick, no, no danger of me turning Republican from super chat money. Here's a super chat from William Long. Thank you, William. Bit late to the party, gutted about Kevin Conroy as a bisexual man and an LGBTQ plus member. He was a hero to me on 2 different levels. Any chance of a best Batman ever on his body of work? I already did a best Batman ever about the animated series, but I was actually thinking of reaching out to some people and seeing if there was any interest in doing like a Kevin Conroy tribute, like roundtable live stream at some point over the weekend or next week. I think that might be cool. Maybe I haven't mentioned this to anybody. I haven't talked to, but maybe if Dana wanted to do it with me, and if we could talk Jason into joining us, and maybe someone else who wanted to jump online with us for an hour or so and talk about Kevin Conroy and the animated Batman, that might be cool. I haven't completely decided to do that, but I was thinking about doing something like that, just having like a live stream with me and a few other people talking about Kevin Conroy. And but yeah, that might be something to think about. But there is a best Batman ever about the animated series. It's not specifically about Kevin Conroy, but obviously I mentioned, how great he is in that. And thanks about Wow3620. Thank you for saying you like the Quantum Leap video. I appreciate that. 255AD with the super chat says, "What's 7-Eleven pizza like?" Twitch streamer said awful. I mean, it's okay. It's not like great pizza. I wouldn't say it's awful. It's fine. It's, there's like, I say Star Trek Voyager is perfectly acceptable Star Trek because it's usually not awful, but it's rarely super good either. It's just kind of, it's okay. This is acceptable. That's kind of like 7-Eleven pizza. Like, I don't think there's anything terrible about it. It's not like I turn my nose up at it or go like, oh, 7-Eleven pizza. Oh, fuck. It's fine. Like, that's all it is. But it's fine, And I would imagine if you're hungry and it's the middle of the night and it's the only place open, it's probably pretty goddamn good. So anyway, that's it, everybody. I'm wrapping it up. Thank you so much for, again, you all were really generous with the super chats this time. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Don't forget patreon.com or the join button if you want to support this channel on a more regular basis, which I would encourage you to do. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the chat for Dana's Saturday 6 on Dana's channel tomorrow. Hopefully some of you can make it. And I will see you next week for more videos. And that's it. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care. And I'll see you around. Bye-bye.